what an exciting day. My queen size top is already sewn together with the solid squares and the sawtooth border. I sent it off to my cousin Carol Ann with her large professional quilting machine, and she is going to finish it for me. But today I'm going to show you how to sew a quilt together with the Lattice and Cornerstone setting. Now this is a twin size quilt. It has flat flowers in it. There's 11 blocks, and the 4 roses are in each of the corners. Oh, Nancy Page would be so proud of me. Now the quilting is very simple. You can just do it with a walking foot and just do stitch in the ditch right along the lattice like this. And with that same walking foot, you could go ahead and do the cabling in the border. And if you would like, you could use a darning foot, do some free motion machine quilting right in that side triangle. Now the rows are sewn together on the diagonal. This is Amber's lap robe quilt, and it has 8 blocks in it, and yet it fits great on her twin size bed, just a little smaller. The quilting is simple with just stitch in the ditch, and then there's some cabling on the border. Well, her mother Teresa did that. She did a beautiful job just on her regular sewing machine. This is a photo of my queen size bed. It's the Lattice and Cornerstone setting. There's 18 blocks in it, and you can see how the border just drops over the side and covers the top mattress, and then it is perfect with a dust ruffle. Well, a king-size bed needs 25 blocks. Oh, those king-size beds, they're just too big. Well, I'm making a baby quilt today, so I only need 5 blocks. I placed the 5 blocks in order, and I planned it so that the flowers of the same shape or color are equally distributed throughout the quilt, separated out the blues. Well, once I had it planned, then I numbered them, and it goes in diagonal row order. So this is 1, and then the second diagonal row is 2, 3, 4, and then this is 5. Well, once you have it planned and numbered, then you stack them, and you want to have 1 on the top, so you can just take 1 stack to your sewing machine. Well, I'm using this stripe fabric for the lattice, and it is wonderful. You should look for a stripe that is approximately 3 inches wide, and then it should have a 1/4 inch space on either side of the stripe. There's a 1/2 inch space right in there that is perfect for your seam allowance. Now take your 6 inch by 24 inch ruler. You need to cut it on the lengthwise grain, and just place that 1/4 inch line right on the stripe. Oh, that is great. Got it all lined up, and then just cut right through that 1/2 inch space. Now, because it's cut on the lengthwise grain, it just doesn't have any give to it. Boy, that is really tight. So you need to cut your lattice 1/8 inch longer than your block. Now, we squared our blocks to 12.5 inches. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this lattice at 12 5/8. Let me get that all lined up and cut that off. Well, for my baby quilt, I need to have 16 lattice. Ooh, it is just beautiful. I love it. And I also love this fabric. This is the Cornerstone fabric. Now, it reads solid from a distance, so it doesn't detract from the flowers or from the baskets. And you cut it into 3.5 inch strips, or actually whatever width your stripe is. Well, I'm just going to line up my 1/4 inch line on that torn edge, cut that off, get rid of that, and then cut it into 3.5 inch strips. Let me just line this up, cut it, and once you have your 3.5 inch strips cut, then go ahead, take your 6 inch square ruler and trim off that salvage edge. Let's just get rid of that, and cut it into 3.5 inch squares. Ooh, this is perfect. Well, as soon as I get this whole quilt cut, then I'll be ready to sew this baby together. This is my favorite part, sewing the top together. Now I have my stack of blocks, all 5 in a stack, and I have 5 lattice in 1 stack, 5 lattice in a second stack, and 5 cornerstones. You do that. And then I have a second stack with the remaining 5 lattice and 6 cornerstones set aside. Okay, now I have it turned exactly like this so that whenever you take and you flip this lattice right sides together, then you can see the stripe stitching right along here. So flip the lattice to the block and flip the cornerstone to the block. All right, we're ready. 1/4 inch seam allowance, 15 stitches to the inch. I have my 1/4 inch foot on there, and it is going to be perfect for keeping this nice and straight. Now, if you want to make sure, you might want to change your needle position. I can see on mine that my needle is just to the right of that stripe, and this is looking good. But you can go ahead and move the needle position just to get that perfect seam allowance. All right, I'm right at the end of that. So now I'm just going to go ahead and pick up my next cornerstone lattice and just butt this closely right behind it. Let's get that right up there. Raise that presser foot and keep on going. Okay, now you just keep on repeating this process over and over again until you have all 5 chained along. I'm covering up my work. But you would just go to the next lattice, flip it right sides together, next cornerstone, just chain that right behind, get your old train going. And as soon as you have them all chained along, then you go back and cut right after the lattice cornerstone. It's important. Don't cut this one, for Pete's sakes, because that's just like a pin that's right in there holding that together. So then just take your lattice and flip it right sides together. At this time, you want to match this seam. So take that seam, press it down, and the one underneath, press it up. They're locking seams, so it's easy to get those together. All right, so let me just line this up. Hold on right there. Use your stiletto and make sure that you keep that on the line. Oh, get it right over that bump. Now, usually I like to anchor it. Now, you could use pins, that's for sure, but you can certainly finger pin if you grab hold of the opposite end and just hold on tight until you get down to the bottom, and then you can release it and let go. Now, at this time, we're going to really be doing some assembly line sewing. I don't want to cut any threads. I would just going to keep all 5 blocks going right off the end of this sewing machine. And then as soon as I'm done with all 5 blocks chained, this is what I'm going to do next. I'm going to get this little extra stack here of lattice and cornerstones, flip this one right sides together to it, assembly line sew on all of these, and then on the very last lattice and last cornerstone, I'm just going to whip it around and sew it on the opposite end. Oh, I've got some work to do. Like a magician, I have it all sewn together. My train is in perfect order. Now, I want to take these and carefully cut them apart in the diagonal rows. Now, you remember the first diagonal row was just made up of 1 block. So I'm going to go right here and just clip it right in between 1 and 2. So I've got my first diagonal row, and I'm just going to place it right there. It'll be ready to go. And then the second diagonal row had block 2, 3, and block 4. Let me get that one lined up. Remember, there were 3 blocks in the second diagonal row. So I'm just going to cut it right after block number 4. And I'll take these. Oh, these are barely going to fit onto the table. And just line those up right so. And then the very last block, block number 5. Oh, and look what's hanging on here. All of the lattice and the cornerstones. And then the very last one is the lattice with two cornerstones on either side. This is for the right corner. So I'm just going to take this and clip this apart. Now, the beauty of this is that they're all in perfect order. It's just like putting pins in them, and you don't have to go back and get them all set up again. Now, once you have them clipped apart in these diagonal rows, right here at this seam, I need to go back and flip this piece right sides together and sew that seam, and then I only have 1 more right here. Flip it right sides together and sew it. So that will be the next step. And after that, I'm going to go into this extra lattice. Now, if you look up here at this top block, you see that there's lattice on 2 sides, But right here, how about a piece of lattice and a cornerstone? Well, that makes perfect sense to me. So I'm just going to clip this one off, and that piece will go right here to finish off that diagonal row. And then it's just the same thing the whole way down. This piece needs a lattice attached to it. That'll finish off that row. And then look at the bottom block. Now this is the hard one. This is the real tricky one. Block number 5. Okay, we've got lattice on 2 sides, but we need to go ahead and get a lattice right here. We'll just flip it right sides together, do the same thing, seam down on the top, seam up underneath, open that over, and then to finish off this very corner, this was the tricky one. This is the lattice with the cornerstones on both ends. That is going to go right in place there so that the lower right-hand corner is completely framed with lattice and cornerstones. All right, so my work is cut out for me. I'm going to sew my diagonal rows together and get the lattice on the ends of each row, and I'll show you the next step. This really is a magical way of sewing the quilt together. And it's really weird, too. Wait till you see the next one. Well, I have my blocks all laid out. Here's the first block right up here, the first diagonal row. Lattice on 3 sides, all set. This is the second diagonal row. And you can see lattice on the end, through the middle, and on the top of each one of the blocks. And then one lattice right here in the end. And then the last block, lattice on all 4 sides. Well, there is something weird here. 14 lattice, and I told you there were 16. Something's missing. And it's right here in these 2 spots. If you look and see, we've got a lattice we need right in that part. This is the strangest thing, but believe me, this is going to work. That goes right there. Now you can see lattice framing all those blocks. And then right over here on the opposite side, we need to have another lattice and cornerstones. That's just about falling off the table. But believe me, I have no idea how we are going to attach that. Well, actually I do. Let's look at the side triangles. Now they come from one very large square. The size of the square is 22 1/4 inches. And what I did already was draw diagonal lines in both directions, and then I went and stay stitched on both sides because this is the bias right here in the middle, and we don't want to have a stretch on that. So let me just go ahead and cut this into 4. Oh, we've got to move that block here. For heaven's sakes, I do not want to cut that at this stage. Okay, so there's the stay stitching on all of the triangles. Now you can see this one fits in perfectly right up here. Let me line that up, and I'll put it there like that. Okay, that is going to fit great. And then you just need to have another one over on the other side, and that'll complete that whole row. Well, let me take these down to the other end, and let's see. If we take this side triangle and place it right here, and you attach this together first, then that's going to fit right in there. Perfect! And one more side. We've got a side triangle over here. We're going to attach the lattice and cornerstone to the side triangle first, and then that will also fit right in there. So we've got a whole diagonal row going along here, one along here, and another one here. Only corners left. Now those come from 14-inch squares, and also one diagonal line, stay stitching on both sides, cut it only once, and let's take a look because that is going to complete the square. Going to put a corner there and right here, and then one on each of the corners. And that whole thing will be one complete square. Perfect. Well, I'm going to sew this together, and then I'm taking some of that 3-inch stripe and framing the whole quilt. And then I'm going to add one extra background border around the outside edge. The next time you see this, you'll see the whole top sewn together, and it'll be ready for layering and marking. We have been really working and it's coming along great. This is what we did. Teresa helped me sew the top together, and then we started and did the layering. The backing goes down first, right sides down, then comes the batting, and this is cotton batting. This is 80-20, 80% cotton, 20% polyester. Then the quilt top came right side on, and we spread it from the center out so that it's perfectly smooth. Now, to hold these layers together, we like to clamp it on a table. This is just a great clamp for just wrapping right around a thin table, a very narrow table. You can use binder clamps as well, but these work great. Next comes safety pinning, and I like to use 1-inch safety pins and this pinning tool. Now, these pins have a cover on them so that they're easier to grasp, and just slip them in, and then when you're ready to close them, just push them down like that. Whoa, let me push them down and close them like that. But when you put 500 pins into a king-size quilt, boy, you want to have something easy to help you out. And then whenever you remove the pins, you do it exactly the same way. Now, marking for that cabling is great fun. Let me show you that. This is the stencil, and to help, we went ahead and actually did a line, a diagonal line right through the corner, and then did the square lines to help us line it up with the edge of the quilt. Now, first you go ahead and put it in the corner, and you just mark it with a permanent marker. And that is the easy part. It's getting these cables evenly spaced down along here. That is the tricky part. But just go ahead and look at your template. This is the corner right here, and then these are what the cables are that go down the sides. Okay, so you just have to see that from here to here, the pattern repeats itself. See the little box right here? And then you see the little box again. Okay, from this point to this point, it's a repeat. And it is actually, if you measure it, it is 6 inches. So we have to figure out how we're going to get a 6-inch cable evenly spaced down this side. Take a yardstick. Okay, and put a corner of the yardstick right here on one end and come over to the opposite side right where it repeats, right where it's a complete one. And the measurement on this particular one is 52.5 inches. Ugh, little math here. Let's see. 52.5 inches. So let me enter 52.5, and we're going to divide by 6 because that's the length of the cable. And, okay, we're going to get 8.75. That's pretty good because it's really close to 9 inches. Or 9. We can get 9 cables the whole way along. So if we go ahead, let's see. 9. 9 times 6 is 54. So let's start with 54. Take away 52.5 because that's what we have. So we have to reduce those 9 cables by 1.5. That's just 1.5 inches. That's not very much. If we go ahead and divide that by 9, all we have to do is reduce each one by 0.16, and that's not even 1/4 inch. Oh my gosh, all this math. Well, let's see if we can do it. So let's just take the ruler, and from this point right here, we want to line this up 3 1/4 inches in. So from this point here over to just not quite 6 inches, I'm going to put a mark like that. So it's just, we just reduced it slightly. So now I want to just take the dot on the cable, match it up with the end, and then bring it right over to here. And all I want to do is mark 1/2 of this. Just take the permanent marking pen, go right through, mark half of it, and then slip it down, reduce it just a little bit so that I just have a little bit smaller. And I'm just following those lines, marking it exactly as did on the opposite side. And where it's going to reduce itself, where it's going to get smaller, is right here in the middle. All right, let me see. Okay, so now that the one is done, then all I need to do is just go ahead and mark again that same measurement, just a little less than 6 inches. Mark it. Hopefully, it's going to be even the whole way down. Well, let me just take out my clamps. And I'm going to roll this up and show you how to do the machine quilting on it. I put my walking foot on my sewing machine and I am having a great time going around these cables. And that's why I like this particular cable, because if you don't like to free motion machine quilt, this cable is gentle enough so that you can just go ahead and sew around it with your walking foot. Now the thing is, by the time you go around this, do you know you will have circled your quilt 8 times. That is pretty incredible, isn't it? But you just go ahead, lengthen your stitch, and I actually reduce the tension on my needle bar so that you can just go ahead and swing right around here, but just stay on that line. And it really helps to have this flat base as well. And as I'm sewing along these blue lines, I was thinking, did I actually say permanent marking pen? Oh my goodness, it's a water-soluble pen because you want to wash these lines away. So just in case you get off the line, nobody will know it. But anyhow, I'm just going to stop right here and show you how to do the binding. This is great fun going around, but you really need to see how to finish this. So I'll just go ahead and cut my threads. Now, the binding comes from a 3-inch wide strip that's been pieced together. Well, I've got about 7 of these all pieced together so that it'll go the whole way around the quilt. And you just take it and press it in half, wrong sides together. Now I'm going to start right in the middle of one side. Just use my walking foot still. Keep that long stitch length in there. Slip that right up there against the edge. And then you just line up the edge of the walking foot with the edge of the quilt. Now it's a little bit longer than 1/4 inch, but actually it's going to work out just fine. Now whenever I do this, I like to put just a little bit of tension on my strip. Make sure you hold that flat as you go along there and just move it along. Just keep it flat. Make sure underneath you don't have any puckers in your quilt. Now as I'm coming into this corner, I'm going to go ahead and put a pin exactly the same width as my seam. So I know, okay, Al, you have got to stop right on that point. Needle down, whoops, needle down. Okay, raise it, raise the presser foot, turn it to the next side. Yes, it's perfect. Oh, and that needle in there, that pin in there, I can see is going to give me trouble, so I'm going to just pull it out. Okay, so then you just drop your walking foot and you reverse sew right off the back end of the quilt. Then once you reverse sew, needle up, pull it forward, just release it, and then take this corner and fold it up at a perfect 45-degree angle, exactly 45. And once you have that done, take the strip and this time fold it back down so that it lines up perfectly with that edge. Just line up perfectly here and here. And then you just start sewing again. You don't have to start where you let off. Just go ahead and start on that side and just keep on going right around there. Well, I could just keep on doing my binding forever too, except I got a thread caught right there. Let me cut that off. So you just keep on going, folding the corners up until you get back to where you started. Then you just have to overlap your stitches at the end. And then right here, go ahead and trim your binding, trim your backing and your batting up to that edge. If you want to use your rotary cutter, oh, and watch this corner right here. It is so easy to just cut that corner off. But I like to leave about, 1/8 inch extra so around the outside edge. And then all you need to do is just take this and fold it around to the back side. That's the perfect corner right there. And then from this side, all you need to do is just, I like to pull my binding over so that it covers that previous line of stitching. I am just such a machine stitcher that I like to cover that edge so that then I can go back. Let me just tuck this corner in right here, fold that on the back side just as you did on the front side, so that once I've got that pinned in place, then all you need to do is just go back with invisible thread on the top and some pink in the bobbin and just sew right in the ditch to hold this binding down. Well, I have had so much fun making these quilts with you. Well, I hope that your quilts become family heirlooms, and may someday a blue ribbon be hanging on your quilt.